At such times, always remember 3.
Over 12 billion naira approved for agencies under the Ministry of Interior for effective service delivery.
Six suspects arrested in connection with abduction and murder of Kachian monarch in Kaduna State.
Kaduna High Court refuses bail applications for the leader of Shiites movement in Nigeria, Sheikh Ibrahim El-Zakzaky and his wife.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall take a look at ethics, value system, and willful disobedience of laws in Nigeria.
It is common knowledge that every society or nation in the world is governed by certain rules and regulations in order to ensure law and order.
Well, like other nations, Joy, Nigeria has its own pieces of legislation from federal right up to the local level that govern the way citizens should conduct their affairs in line with civilized norms.
That's right, Kingsley. Now, over the years, these laws are being abused by some individuals, even when law enforcement agents try to ensure compliance.
Absolutely. Now, this is obviously contrary to the behavior we see of citizens, even of neighboring African countries, where there is preponderant obedience to the laws of their respective countries, with or without the presence of law enforcement agents.
That's right, Kingsley. And I want us to look at some of the common challenges we've had with people obeying the laws in Nigeria, especially when you talk about the issue of traffic rules. A lot of people in Nigeria break traffic rules, and I keep wondering.
The light is red, and red means stop.
I know.
But, you know, you find motorists just zoom past. And if you try to correct them or draw attention to what they have just done in terms of infringing on the traffic regulations, they turn into abuse.
I know.
Of themselves, by the way.
There was a time when I was coming from Apo and I was driving towards Area 11 and someone just ran through a traffic light, and in a split second, that was it.
An accident.
There was an accident.
That's right.
So we're asking, why do some Nigerians take joy in doing the wrong things? Why should citizens be forced to obey the law? What are the factors responsible for such behavioral patterns? Very
pertinent questions that you have raised, Joy. I mean, quite aside from the very simple one of obedience of traffic rules, you find at the higher level, the ethics question would arise in terms of politics, in terms of governance, in terms of business.
And people are comfortable doing all this.
Absolutely, and that's why some would argue that we are the way we are. The challenge is, many have argued that, look, our problem is not the absence of laws. Indeed, for virtually everything, or every conduct or potential misconduct, there is a piece of legislation in it in Nigeria. The problem has to do with obedience of those laws, or, in fact, enforcement of those laws. But why is it that elsewhere people willingly obey the laws, whereas on our shores it would appear that the reverse is the case, and indeed we're all suffering the consequences of that. These are some of the talking points as we interrogate the salient issues of ethics, value system, as well as lawlessness in Nigeria. So on that note, we'd like to welcome you to Good Morning Nigeria. My name is Kingsley Osadolo.
And I am Joy Usiago. We thank you for joining us on the program this morning. Now, before we go to the main issue and then touch on some of our segments, let's link up with Claire Adelabu Abdurazak, who is on the other side waiting to deliver the early morning news. Now, Claire, are you one of those who break traffic laws?
I'm sure you know the answer, Joy. I rarely do break traffic rules. But again, you asked the question earlier on, you know, why do people break rules and regulation, not just traffic rules. And humanist theorists will tell you it's a gender thing. It depends on how, both, gender, male and female are constituted biologically. And of course, you do know that women do obey, rules better than the men.
I agree.
Well, you want a response. You want a response for that from me on behalf of the men. But in fact, well, that's an argument to pursue when our guests do come. We will raise the gender perspective with regard to obedience of laws and regulations that govern society. But look at the entire spectrum. We're talking about good governance. We're talking about ethics. We're talking about business. We're also talking about politics. Why is it that people just do the wrong things, whereas elsewhere in other climes, it is preferable, and that's what we see, that people do the right things without compulsion.
All right, Kingsley, we'll leave it to the guests who, of course, have better in this area. So let me begin with the early morning news, and we'll take on the fake meeting of yesterday. More than 12 billion naira has been approved by the federal government towards enhancing the operational capacity of the various agencies under the Ministry of Interior for effective service delivery. Now, Minister of Interior Abdul Rahman Dambazao announced this while briefing journalists after the meeting of the Federal Executive Council. He said the 3.9 billion naira of the amount is for the provision of 22 firefighting trucks, water tankers, and other related items for the federal fire service stations nationwide.
To ensure that the fire incidents are contained and also controlled. Some of these fire trucks are being distributed accordingly. We identify areas that have the higher hazards. Of course, we're just starting this, and we'll continue to do this effort. And
President Muhammadu Buhari says the extent of mismanagement the governing APC met on coming to power was mind-boggling, but assures Nigerians that the country is being properly organized for a sustainable future. This was while receiving a pressure group from the southeast part of the country under the auspices of One-on-One Nigeria.
We run one-on-one project to drive home the agenda through a door-to-door campaign. We are used to this, Your Excellency, because all we need to do is to replicate what we have already done elsewhere for you, Your Excellency. We want to look at, in the Southeast, begin to run programs in Igbo language that will be showcasing your achievements. Opposition is looking at the other side of the story. We have a story to tell, and this story has to be told.
It pleases me a great deal that there is a group, a set, that is closely watching what the government is doing and articulating the facts and presenting them.
And 6 suspects alleged to have abducted and murdered the monarch of Kechia in Kaduna State have been arrested by the State Security Service.
Of the criminals during the negotiation period, but could not effect any arrest because of the safety of the victims of the kidnapping. Immediately after Gladima's body was discovered, this service tracked and arrested 6 members of the syndicate at different locations in the state.
And the security situation in Kaduna, especially the Biringwari area, calls for drastic measures. Suleiman Abdullahi Rigachiko reports on the steps being taken by the Nigerian Air Force to contribute its quota to the fight against crime there. He says the latest is the establishment of a forward operational base codenamed Eagle Strike.
The only thing I want to do is to thank, first of all, His Excellency, the President of Nigeria, for doing what is almost a magic, because I have had some discussion with the Chief of Air Staff. The amount of equipment and support that is being given to them.
With the number of helicopters and platforms that the federal government under the leadership of President Muhammadu Buhari has given the Air Force, we believe that we have additional capacity that we can deploy here.
And the Kaduna High Court, presided over by Justice Gideon Keroda, has refused the bail applications for the leader of Shiites movement in Nigeria, Sheikh Ibrahim El-Zakzaki, and his wife.
The application was brought on the health ground of the defendant. The court said that the facility, he has not proved to the court sufficiently to the court that the facility he is enjoying cannot take care of his health demands.
The defendants have been held in custody for a period exceeding 2 years, which is one of the circumstances that the law says is a basis for which a bill can be granted. He still went ahead to say that as far as he is concerned, considering the nature of this matter and several other circumstances, he was of the view that it was safer to order an accelerated trial rather than to grant bail.
And the Liberian President, George Weah, says he's confident that Nigeria's economic diversification through agriculture will boost food security in Nigeria and beyond. Now, that was in a message by the Liberian President to the 9th Annual Conference of the Center for Peace and Environmental Justice, which held in Minna, Niger State.
In 2019, we are praying and we are calling on all electorates to respect the laws. And our political leaders and traditional leaders should do the needful to see that we have a peaceful election.
And the Special Intervention Fund remains so dear to President Muhammadu Buhari, and that's because of his direct connection with the people. But the recent resolution of the National Assembly to use a major part of that fund for the conduct of the 2019 general election generated reactions from Nigerians who saw the move as obstructive. In retrospect, however, the Senate has now reconsidered the sources of the violence.
Because of some obvious and eminent issues of national socio-economic importance, the supplementary requests cannot be implemented as earlier approved.
As contained in the table below as detailed, those in favor of that say aye, those against say nay. The ayes have it.
And now good news for job seekers in the federal government agencies who have advanced in age. They now have a cause to smile as the House of Representatives has commenced a process of legislation that would ensure that they are not discriminated against. This is because the House of Representatives is working on a legislation to eradicate such lacuna in line with constitutional provisions.
Allow for vibrant Nigerian youths to gain employment into the institutions and agencies of the federal government of Nigeria and reduce as much as possible the rate of unemployment in the country.
It is very unfortunate that agencies of government set, and indeed private sector, set ridiculously low maximum age limits like 22, 25, and 27 years.
And ahead of this 73rd session of the Executive Committee and the 41st Conference of the African Parliamentary Union, the female delegates of the Union under the leadership of the President of Zimbabwe's Senate, Mabel Chinomona, have paid a courtesy call on the wife of the President, Aisha Muhammadu Buhari. Issues surrounding the promotion of the education of the girls dominated their discussions.
It is my hope that your conference will afford an opportunity for articulating measures that will address this complex issue within the cultural sensitivities of our communities. I also hope that you will spare some time to consider the situation of those girls who are already in these marriages.
All right, that ends the news for now. There'll be more at 10. In the meantime, I'll leave Kingsley and Joy to deliberate on why people break laws. That will be after the break.
Unemployment, notably youth unemployment, features strongly in our party's manifesto. We intend to attack the problem frontally through revival of agriculture.
The 30K is going a long way. Actually, I bought an acre of land for 60K like 2012, and presently I have a cassava farm and a yam farm.
Reorganized, trained, and fully equipped, we are the new improved Nigeria Police Force. We fight crime. We bust syndicates. Whatever the crime, wherever the hideout, the Nigeria Police Force will get you busted. Stop kidnapping, armed robbery, murder, pipeline vandalism, and other criminal activities. Be productive. Be security conscious. Join the police force to secure your life and property. This message is from the Nigeria Police Force Public Relations Department.
Kehinde suffers from indigestion. His twin Tayi suffers from heartburn. Sometimes it's the other way around, or both. That's why they use Gaviscon Double Action. It soothes within 3 minutes and lasts for up to 4 hours. For double relief from heartburn and indigestion, Gaviscon Double Action.
Your favorite Maggi star now wears a new look. Its great taste and quality still remain the same. With Maggi, every woman is a star.
Team huddle. But we lost. Don't be tired, guys. This isn't a loss. It's a practice for winning.
Nothing makes a mother prouder than seeing her child growing up. But I know as he learns to lead, he'll face even more dirt, germs, and risk of illness.
That's why in changing seasons, you need strong Dettol protection. Because Dettol protects from up to 100 illness-causing germs.
Growing up needs Dettol protection.
Brought us as usual.
As usual. You have no problem.
For the three put
You are welcome, sir.
as usual. Yeah. I was.
You take that one. You take that one. You don't understand? We want Nigerian homegrown rice. Finish. You don't have. You don't have.
Join the rice revolution today.
No other rice that tastes like Nigerian rice. Are you sorry? That's the Nigerian rice we are talking about. Chocolate made in Nigerian rice. Healthy food. I'm going to bring Mrs. to come to chocolate rice of made in Nigeria here. And see how it are made.
Correct.
And how they are cook it.
Correct.
Homegrown rice are good for your health. It boosts our economy and give employment to our people.
This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Thanks for staying with us on Good Morning Nigeria. Now for some business news, let's join Joy Uzo for details.
It's good to have you join us on Business News. Effort of the federal government to stop importation and increase local production and consumption of rice as well as other commodities is paying off as Nigeria records reduced rice import in 2018. This stride has been attributed to concerted efforts of the Ministry of Agriculture and interventions of the Central Bank of Nigeria. Mr. Chijoke Ikechukwu, an economist, reacts to this development. In his words, he suggests that government should ensure that the ports and borders are tightened and task force should be in place to monitor activities so government's investment on local rice production will not be sabotaged.
Government has tried as much as possible through CBN to make sure that they don't allocate any foreign currency for rice importation. The ones we see being imported were not allocated by CBN, probably through other means.
On the new minimum wage, Ikechukwu described it as a stepping stone for Nigerian workers, but notes the importance of a set target for its implementation. In another development, Nigeria is set to resume the export of hibiscus, locally known as zobo, to Mexico in the nearest future. Coordinating Director of the Nigeria Agricultural Quarantine Service, NAQS, Vincent Isegbe, will disclose this in an interview with Business News. Says the plant was suspended after storage pests were discovered in some consignments that were to be shipped to Mexico last year. With the necessary measures in place to forestall a reoccurrence, Mr. Isegbe assured Nigerians and farmers that the country is set to resume exportation of the commodity.
More so now that the oil market is very unstable, I think the stabilizing income earner should be agric, and many farmers are taking that, seriously. We receive emails virtually on a daily basis from different parts of the country for people who are looking into vegetable exports, into culinary herbs, into ginger and other products, and we are guiding them accordingly, that should follow the necessary phytosanitary procedures so that their products are not rejected.
In 2017, Nigeria exported a total 1,983 containers of hibiscus to Mexico, and it earned as much as $35 million within 9 months. Mexico is Nigeria's largest market for hibiscus. Until the equities market stocks closed Wednesday's trading on a negative note, with the NSE All-Share Index depreciating by 0.14% to close at 32,108.30 basis points. Here is a graphic summary of the closing figures. That's Business News. Many thanks for watching. I'm Joy Uzo.
Thank you, Joy. And our newspaper review segment is next on Good Morning Nigeria.
And our newspaper reviewer, Bayo Atoyebi, is in the studio. Good morning, Bayo.
Good morning, Joy. Good morning, Kingsley. And good morning, Nigeria.
Good to see you. Joy, I think you can begin. Yes.
All right, let's take a look at the front pages of the papers and what's trending also inside. Let's start with the Nigerian pilot. The lead story there says 2019 INEC budget. That's the kicker. It comes with a couple of riders. Senate removes 25.5 billion naira from power budget. 29 other MDAs affected in budget cut. Cuts to fund part of INEC's 242 billion naira budget for 2019 elections. And service-wide votes alone can't fund INEC election budget. You can get details of the story on page 4. And below the picture story there, we're trying to organize Nigeria after mind-boggling mismanagement. That comment is attributed to President Muhammadu Buhari. And at the foot of the front page, a couple of stories. Senate disagrees with police burglary report on Ekwuremadu's assassination attempt. Federal Fire Service, Immigration, Prison get 12 billion naira for infrastructure. Abuja Airport runway repair now to cost 6.5 billion naira. And court rejects El Zazaki's bail application. 2019 group plans to mobilize 2 million votes for Atiku Obi in Anambra, and Senate divided over implementation of social intervention scheme. These are some of the stories you'll find today in the Nigerian Pilot newspaper.
All right, from the Punch newspaper at page 3, Punch says Dogara adjourns plenary as House audio system crashes. Niger decries circulation of contaminated meat. NYC DG cautions coppers that should become members on election. And U.S. elections, Nigerian Americans hailed conduct, seek smooth 2019 polls. Court refuses Shiite leader El-Zakzaki wife bail. I won't abandon inherited projects, says Fireman.
Well, let's start with the Senate. In fact, some papers are reporting that the Senate reversed itself about the subhead from where to conduct the environment for the 2019 elections. It has now resolved that it is taking the 121.122 billion from subheads under service-wide vote. The others are to be taken from 9 ministries and the Office of the Secretary to the Government of Federation. It may be recalled that the executive had proposed that the supplementary budget to fund the election should be varied from the projects inserted by the legislature into the 2018 budget. The legislature, however, initially determined to source for the funds for the 2019 budget from the Social Intervention Fund. Accordingly, with the focus on the 2 major subheads, those of the service via votes and those of the 9 ministries and Office of Secretary to the Government of Federation, a total sum of 242.2 billion has now been approved for INEC. Meanwhile, the Senate moved also a motion to investigate the alleged misuse of Social Intervention Fund, and this had to be balanced by the majority party too with a concomitant motion to probe the allocation of the subsidy reinvestment and empowerment program, SURE-P. Therefore, the motion was carried, and also another motion was to investigate how police applied the funds for election for 2011 and 2015. Meanwhile, there was a demonstration at the Federal Ministry of Budget and National Planning. Daily Trust reports that an economic expert, and who was also described as a presidential candidate for the abandoned Nigeria Renewal Party, was asking the federal government to increase the 2019 budget from 8.73 trillion that is being proposed to 15 trillion. Dr. Tope Kolade Fasua says that the increase should be made to enable citizens enjoy more dividends of democracy. However, he did not state how or where the 15 billion should be sourced from.
All right.
All right, let's go to the Daily Sun newspaper. And the lead story there, vote buying splits senators. It comes with 2 riders. FG mopping up PVCs with SIP funds. That comment is attributed to PDP, and program transparent, says APC, responding to the comment. There's a picture story there where you can see Prince Charles receiving copies of the Red Book, an anthology of Benin history by Oba Eware II for himself and Queen Elizabeth II of England in Abuja yesterday. Beside the picture stories, we have a couple of stories that might interest you. New minimum wage, Buhari will decide after studying report, says federal government. Comes with 2 riders. Income levels determine minimum wage, El Rufai. Current state profile can't carry 30,000 naira. Ahmed, you can get details of the story on page 6, and below it, suspected killers of Kaduna monarch arrested. Senate seeks national burial honor for Tony Anene.
Yes, let's take the 2 running stories. One, the Kaduna State arm of the Department of State has paraded 6 persons they arrested for the killing of the Agwon Adara, the Mewada Galadima. The State Director, SSS, says 20 suspects were actually involved in the kidnapping and the alleged killing of the paramount ruler. The service said that, regrettably, they had actually tracked the criminals during negotiations, but they cautioned not to strike so as not to endanger the monarch actually was their restraint. However, when immediately the Agwon body was discovered, the service tracked and arrested 6 of them. The mastermind was arrested at Rigasa in Kaduna. Another was who was said to be a former member of Boko Haram was arrested in Soba. One was also arrested at Sakwai in Kachia local government, while 2 others were arrested in Jos. Meanwhile, the Kaduna State High Court has declined to grant bail to the leader of the Movement of Islam in Nigeria, otherwise known as Shiat, Ibrahim Zaki. The judge ruled that for the case of culpable homicide and disturbing of public peace, rather than grant bail, which was not sought for, the court says it is going to offer accelerated hearing in that case. And then the other fallout is about the 30,000 minimum wage. Governor David Umahi of Ebonyi State says 95% of states cannot pay the 30,000 minimum wage. He says 30,000 can only be paid if the federal allocation account formula is reviewed to give a majority of the sums to the states. Governor Umahi says that when he compiled the 30,000 to local government area, what he found out is that 1 billion will have to be borrowed every month to add to salaries before salaries can be paid. He says no governor signs check, but civil servants and labor know that the 30,000 minimum wage was just putting water in a basket and praying to God that it will hold.
All right, New Telegraph, page 33. New Telegraph, page 33. You have a story there, two stories. We are taking from there, 2 or 3 stories. Senate lauds Buhari for activating Ajaokuta-Itakpe Warri rail line. And fresh anxiety over planned relocation of my 12 foodstuff market. In 2019, Buhari support groups asked to shun infighting.
All right, let's take one more story from the Daily Sun before we return to Bio. And it's beside the nameplate. Attack on Ekweremadu, police under fire. Comes with some riders. Senate furious as DSP threatens to release CCTV clips. 4 cops, 1 civil defense nabbed for negligence, and suspect, I don't know owner of house.
Yes, before we go to the attack on the home of the Deputy Senate President, it is noteworthy that the amendment to Electoral Act that was passed by the 2 chambers of the National Assembly has now been transmitted to the office of the President. The clerk of the National Assembly, Mohammed Sanyo Moloriri, is said to have transmitted it on Wednesday. Now to the story about the invasion of the residence of this Deputy Senate President. The Senate has condemned the horrid proclamation by the police that it was a burglary. This was raised by Senator Eyinaya Abaribe, who cited the killing of Bola Ige in his home, as well as Funsho William in Lagos several years ago, as incidences that portends that the police was rash in judging that it was burglary. However, the police also had put out a statement and was citing Section 346 and 347 of the Penal Code to justify its conclusion that it was burglary. Not only that, the police cited the items that were recovered from the persons who invaded the premises, and this included a jack, a big screwdriver, a big rod broken from the kitchen window of the residence of the Deputy Senate President, as well as a torchlight and a kitchen knife from the residence. They said that Barrister Lloyd Ekweremadu, the son of the Deputy Senate President, who intercepted the intruders, has also made voluntary statements, and it was from there that the police made their deductions. They said that apart from that, prior to entry into the residence of the Deputy Senate President, they had broken into another residence at Apu, number 38, Dennis Osadebe, where they stole telephones, jewelries, before proceeding to the residence of the Deputy Senate President. Police statements say that there is no cover-up on their behalf. Meanwhile, just like we wondered here on Good Morning yesterday, where were the security men? 4 policemen and 1 officer of the Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps who were on duty at the residence of the Deputy Senate President have been arrested and have been investigated for negligence of duty and dereliction of duty. The police say that it is not true that the police responded after 7 hours. They said the residents of the Deputy Senate President actually share a fence with the Apple DPO office for that residence.
All right, let's go to our editorial for the day, and it's taken from the Nigerian Pilot. It's captioned, Ochanya and the Call for Justice. We condemn this tragic event in its entirety and mourn with the family, friends, and loved ones of the late Ochanya. We also stand by all women who are victims of sexual assault and molestation, such as perpetrated by the accused, Mr. Abuja. This is shameful, uncanny, bestiality, and pure lunacy. The father and son killer rapists must be brought to book. Now, let's take a look at the story deeply. For days now, the mind-boggling story of how a tender 13-year-old minor Ochanya Elizabeth Ogbanje was raped to death by a Randi lecturer named Mr. Andrew Abuja, and his son Victor had captured national attention. The nation stood still over the weekend when the body of the young girl was finally buried at Ogene Amejo community in Okpoku local government area of Benue State. Now, it is commendable that the state government has swiftly responded to this ugly situation. The principal culprit, Abuja, has been summarily dismissed as a lecturer in Benue State Polytechnic. Surely he is unworthy of imparting any sound knowledge and moral learning on any student, being a moral disaster himself. 2, the government has mandated the state's Ministry of Justice and the police to follow the case diligently and ensure that Abuja faces the full weight of the law, while the son is hunted down and made to face justice. Bye.
Yes, very sadly, the poor girl was buried over the weekend and emotions run high. And the concern expressed by particularly women group and all concerned Nigerians is that issues of rape are treated as with levity, not the seriousness that it deserves, and therefore it has been on ascendancy. However, in the case of Ochanya, the emphasis is that the culprit father, uncle-in-law, has now been charged to court and is to face criminal conspiracy and culpable homicide. His cousin, who is on the run...
Is that his cousin or his son?
Well, the woman is her aunt. Therefore, the mother's, the auntie's son is supposed to be, they are supposed to be cousins, are they not? Well, that's the complication about it. Where in Africa, all we know is brother and sister. It is when you go into those English relations, then you talk about uncles, nieces, and nephews, and sometimes they can be very confusing. But the crux of the matter is that the anxiety it has created and the disparagement from all corners is that it should be treated very seriously. Benue State government has acted promptly. The lecturer has been dismissed from the State Polytechnic, and they have enjoined the police to go after the son who is on the run so that the two of them can be brought to book. But most importantly, the women groups are concerned about the levity to which cases of rape are treated, particularly from the first point of report at the police station.
All right, that's the much we can take. Baya Tebe, we'd like to thank you for being around today. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you for having me, as always.
Okay, it's Good Morning Nigeria. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll be dealing with our conversation segment.
Speech is not a joke. It incites genocide and crimes against humanity. Most of Africa's civil wars are caused by hate speech from one tribe against another. We don't want it here. The Nigerian government stands firm against hate speech.
Under no conditions whatsoever should we tolerate or excuse or justify hate speech or hateful conduct of any kind, especially where such is illegal.
There's no doubt that the resurgent push for separatism, as well as the rising cases of ethnic and religious disharmony, are all traceable to the growing phenomenon of hate speech.
One nation bound in freedom, peace and unity.
Nigeria, one nation, one people.
This is a public service announcement brought to you by NTA.
Fake news which is shared for malicious purposes is a danger to our peace and security in Nigeria. Misinformation as fake news is a serious threat to our hard-earned democracy and promotes hatred and misunderstanding between our communities. We are all responsible for stopping the spread of fake news in its tracks. So, always check the source and credibility of any news item. Say no to fake news. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information.
Oh boy, climb this thing now. Not be only to connect lights.
Come you and yourself now.
Now wow. Oh boy, come down now. Oga Kasali electrician, who would they look for with this? Oh, Oga Kasali, come help us fix this wire now.
Sorry, I no longer carry out illegal connection. It puts the lives of people at risk. and can cause fire outbreak and disrupt power supply. I will never be part of anything that has to do with this any longer because change begins with me.
Oh boy, what you talk makes sense. Oh boy, we could carry this ladder from over.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Nigerians. Suicide bombers are not spirits. They are not ghosts. They are human beings like you and me. They live amongst us. They are your neighbors. They are your friends today, but terrorists tomorrow. So you must know your neighbor now. Security begins with you and me. Know your neighbor. Be vigilant. Be security conscious. Report suspicious persons, objects, and movements to the police and other security agencies. The security of our nation is a duty for you and me.
If you see something, say something. Nigeria, unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Thank you for staying with us on Good Morning Nigeria. Now joining us in our studios here in Abuja and some other locations to discuss our topic for today, I would like to introduce in our Abuja studio Dr. Oke Ikechukwu. He is the Executive Director, Development Specs Academy and Senior Fellow, Nnamdi Azikiwe University, Awka. It's good to see you and welcome. Thanks for joining us this morning,
Thank you,
Dr.
my pleasure.
Ikechukwu.
Yeah. All right, we have two other guests who will be joining us from our network centers. First from Lagos, we'd like to welcome the Director General of the National Orientation Agency, that's Dr. Garba Abari. Dr. Abari, pleasure to have you with us on Good Morning Nigeria today.
Good morning, Kinsley. How are you?
Well, and from Kaduna, we've been joined by a public affairs analyst, as Professor Khalifa Dikwa. Professor Dikwa from our Kaduna Network Center, thank you for being with us.
Good morning, Kinsley and Joy Osiagu and others. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being with us. We're expecting another guest to join us in the course of the conversation. But before we kick off with our first set of questions, let's listen into this backgrounder by way of a vox pop done by our correspondent, Dennis Adegunloye.
We have the moral values, we have moral values and attitudinal decay in this country. People don't use their conscience anymore. People's conscience are dead. People do whatever they want to get whatever they want.
Let the parents start raising our children because our fathers taught us to stand on the truth. And anytime we're in the society, we know how we behave. So I think that is the most important thing, is the family background.
Most of the people I seen today call them a leader, they lack leadership value. You understand? They don't have moral integrity to be a leader. Because if you look at the on-traces from them, you cannot even differentiate our leader and the followers.
I grew up, I know I respect my elders, but this generation, that respect is not there. I have to be sincere to you. The respect is not there. I don't know because anyway you can't. Will I say I will not blame them 100%? Why? Because the mother and the father will do their own, and if you get down to the school, the teachers have to do their own. But that aspect of teacher doing his own has been, how will I say it, it's been defeated. Most of these child these days, if you stop, if they are doing something wrong, and you stop and you beat, he will stand there and even abuse you, not even minding your age. Who are you? You know, that kind of. So I don't even know how their own generation will look.
Exam malpractice. I've been victimized in schools. I thought those days, when you refuse to do exam malpractice, they call it help, but I call it malpractice. So we have a lot of problems in this country. Attitude, generally.
And if you go to distant countries, European countries, the hallmark of the progress that is being made in those countries are based on their moral values. The fact that if I see something that doesn't belong to me, I won't take it. Maybe if I go to church and I misplace my phone, when I come back to that church the next day, I'll see the phone right there and pick it up. But today, even in our churches, in our mosque, and all what have you, if you misplace an item there in the church of God, you won't see it. So that's very bad.
Everywhere you go, people just see cheating as a way of life in Nigeria. People feel you must cut corners, else you don't belong. So people feel you must have a way of making it fast. If not, you don't belong. And these are issues.
All right, correspondent Dennis Adegunloye, thank you very much for the Vox Pop you conducted there. And we had Nigerians express their opinions on the wide variety of issues regarding ethics, value system, and the lingering lawlessness in the country. Gentlemen, that's our guest now. Before we kicked off with the program this morning, my colleague and I, Joy, were sharing some experiences with regard to the kind of behavioral patterns that we find in Nigeria today. And what many experts are now saying that, look, our challenge in the country is not a question of passing laws, that we have laws that will cover every aspect of conduct or misconduct in our lives, but that the issue has to do with our ethical orientation, with our attitude towards laws and lawlessness. Indeed, how to be good neighbors, to one another. And that the examples you find elsewhere in the African continent, countries that are poorer than Nigeria, you find persons, who would behave without compulsion to ensure that indeed their neighbors live a better life and that they themselves also live, a peaceful life. What exactly is gone wrong with us in terms of our values, in terms of our ethics, that we are now seeing an ascendancy of lawlessness, often framed in one word, impunity? Let's begin with Dr. Okey Ikechukwu, who, by the way, of course, has his doctorate in philosophy.
And therefore, is the authority on lawlessness. Well, morality derives from the values of a society, and the society imparts its values through parents, teachers, religious leaders, and then political leaders. So once the values that define the fabric of society are not being reinforced by these pillars of ethics, that society is doomed. And so you look at Nigeria. Yes, people say in other countries abroad, the examples given that things are, we must make a distinction between morality and legality. The average American is more depraved than the average Nigerian.
That's right.
But the law makes it impossible for him to externalize those things. And so you find that many so-called developed nations have moved from morality to legality. So they are now amoral societies. And you find in them a lot of things inconceivable to us that they do. Somebody will wake up in the morning and start shooting his classmates. So in terms of core morality and ethics, we can safely say that we are slightly more human in terms of our feelings, in terms of what compels us, in terms of what will make us say, no, how can you do that, than is going on out there. But where we have a crisis is that, like I said earlier, once the pillars are not supplying the material, society is in trouble. And let's look at it. We had a military coup in 1966. Respected elders, leaders, pillars, custodians of value were killed in cold blood. An announcement was made. Now, that shocked a lot of people. From that, another coup also occurred. That shocked further set of people. And then those involved in the coups became leaders. Now, in our laws, in our culture, in our tradition, in our religious beliefs, whether the ones that came in from outside or the traditional ones, you don't kill somebody and walk around freely in the society. So another set of values was imposed on the conscience and soul of every person in this country, that you greet as His Excellency a murderer. That's one. Two, the leaders, a new process of leadership recruitment began to emerge by announcement. Kingsley has carried out a coup, so he announces that, okay, he's now so and so.
Chief of Staff Supreme Headquarters.
Yes. Or even in, you appoint me something. With that, I become #1 citizen among my people. Now among my people, I'm known to be a layabout, a man of no pedigree who should not be invited to the meeting of elders, but I've become a leader. And so you see that apart from those who were groomed on the tradition of leadership, recruitment, and succession, the Ziks, the Awos, the Aminu Kanus, the Waziris, a new crop of leaders emerged who became custodians of value themselves. And the people who were in the appointive positions also didn't have consultation through commissioners and the rest. So progressively, a new set of values have emerged for the average Nigerian, such that impunity has come to define relevance, authority, respectability, and so the intuition, your own intuition is buried. Your own certainties are buried. Your concern is buried. And so as this caliber of people keep emerging, you now have two sets of leaders, those who ordinarily you will listen to with respect, and those whom you must fear, because they have the instrument of state, and also they have a little more money. And this went on. So after the 1966 coup, we had military rule for 9 years, and then another 16 years. So anybody born in 1983 would be 16, almost an adult thereafter. What values has he imbibed, or she? And so we've bred a new generation of Nigerians for whom discussion, in fact, for whom leadership is the giving of instructions and order. This is the ministry, this is under the Ministry of Information. I was SA and Chief of Staff to the Minister. One of the first things we discovered when we came into the ministry was that there hadn't been training for most information officers for 27 years. Trainings that will impact on their professional development, so that even report writing, this is the only ministry that has office all over the country. That's the feedback system. Today is running an inverted formula. That's why most Nigerians are not informed. Right. That network is supposed to feed in, then the ministry broadcasts from here. But what you found was that even for reports, what you were getting were administrative reports instead of information feedback. Now, what am I saying with all of that? Capacities for leadership, for mentoring, for professional growth, for value impartation disappeared. And so if you appoint me from wherever to become Minister of Information or Head of Customs or Immigration, I come there, personal agenda takes over from national development plans. So at the level of leadership recruitment, everything is wrong. Mentoring, everything is wrong. Parenting, religion has become an industry. So the religious leaders who would ordinarily call you and say, my son, last week you couldn't eat. Today you bought 3 cars. I hope you haven't gone on evil ways. They're no longer playing that role. Traditional rulers who will say, is that not Okonkwo's son? Something is wrong. They will call him and give him a title. So you see that even the restraints, the reaction of society is supposed to have on those who are misbehaving, those who should be the restraint reinforce the negative ethical values. That's why we're here today. That's why there are senators who are distinguished because they rigged the elections. That's why everybody talks about their illustrious son as he takes a chieftaincy title, and they know the illustrious son is a rogue. That is why Nigeria is the way it is. And that's why leadership also becomes, your effectiveness actually will be traceable more to your ability to lie without blinking.
That's right.
To misbehave completely. You're going to the village to see your mother, you're going in a convoy of 13 vehicles, you're doing 140 on a local road, killing people's chicken and goats, and it's not that the devil is chasing you, you're just going to greet your mother.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Oke Ikechukwu. Let's go quickly to our Kaduna Network Center, where Professor Khalifa Dikwa is waiting. You have listened to Dr. Ikechukwu. He has touched on so many salient issues responsible for the behavioral patterns we see in our society today. From your own perspective, can you give us some of the reasons why people behave the way they do in Nigeria today?
For instance, that's the first thing that it is now emboldened basically during democracy. Democracy, an alien democracy, an alien constitution, an alien way of doing things, not based on our values. Now, our coming back to democracy, multi-party system, and so on, from '98, formation of parties, from '99 and then to date, we have 19 years. We have a constitution that does not recognize even the custodian of traditional values. That is, the traditional system has been completely denied of its system with which it used to check the excesses of the child of X, Y, Z. So the traditional system, right from the federal government, it is not there. The National Assembly has never thought about it. And we also saw the demeaning of salient subjects to human lives like history and sociology and social sciences. And again, in the universities, we used to have general studies where we read laws, we read so many things. And again, we do all these things, the elite find it more important, more fashionable to copy the First Amendment of America. America does not have a traditional system. Anything goes. That particular First Amendment called freedom to do anything, freedom is not supposed to be open-ended. Freedom is guided by faith, by basic laws that God the Creator says don't go beyond this. And in America, you can say anything, and you are covered by the thing. And instead of having that sense of patriotism in us and say, wait a minute, this constitution that we copied from outside doesn't have the office of the Senate President. If we were able to create the office of the Senate President in order to give parity to the different sections of the country, why not include the traditional system to be respected, not demeaned, just made below the level of the chairman of local government? Because prior to the coming of the white man, we had our own traditional values, traditional system, where as young men or children we were taught informally that once you steal or you kill, you are not likely to survive. You will be a madman, or with things that will really stick to the psyche of the fellow. Those things are no longer taught within the system because the traditional rulers themselves do not know where they are now. They are looked down upon by the political elite, and a political elite who are mostly into an ambiguous adventure, neither there nor here in Africa, and that they copy anything. For instance, now, Joy and Kingsley. Right now, if, for instance, me and I can see my senior brother, DG NOA, Dr. Garba Abari from Lagos, if you parade the pictures of those who used to cast news on NTA, we should be able to identify at least 40, 45 out of 50. The young man of today will hardly see the face of Kingsley Osadolo and Joy Osago and recognize them because he's not about Nigeria. He thinks abroad, as if that abroad was built by angels. And therefore, that sense of patriotism, the civic instructions, the basic subjects that we were taught, and that once you are caught in school, you have the school sergeant, who were deceived into thinking that the child has a right not to be flogged. We saved the cane, we removed the school sergeant, the school matron, and the discipline right from the school. And then where we started to derail, a child from 1998 who sat down, and the child of the commissioner or minister and so on, who grew up at the age of 7 plus 19, 27, the child of the minister and so on has already graduated in doing masters. The child of nobody around is still loitering around, seeing his father retiree, not even receiving the pension, and he sees his mother with the same rag and so on, saying that he has no hope. The likelihood is that he is going to have friends who are likely to go into vices. By the time they start taking drugs, anything can happen. They feel that because they know in the past people were ignorant, now they know that the children of this minister or the other one who was just trained and taken abroad by public funds. Why not him? And that particular envy of a thing can lead the child of anything, because only the traditional system could call the father to order. If a child misbehaves, anybody within the environment can drill him, flog him, and punish him without any repercussion. Today, our own children and so on, if we are the type of follow father, if a child misbehaves and another neighbor flogs him or punishes him, then the likelihood is that the mother will start creating a problem that during your own absence, this man is always harassing our child and so on. We don't know what you have done and so on. If you are the kind of father, then you start creating certain things rather than joining the elder in the community to punish the child, because under no circumstance that child will be punished. And therefore, that particular thing of telling us that if you lie, you are not likely to grow healthy. If you kill, you will not live around, like Dr. Okechukwu said it. If you steal, the girls in the village will sing a very nasty song about you and so on. Those things will cram them in our minds that never at any time, even we were forced to lie, by the time we come back, we will tell the mother that I was told to lie, but the other time I was told if I lie, I will not grow. And those kind of things were no longer coming from the grandfather or grandmother. Even the newlywed girl used to be accompanied by her grandmother to tell her how to take care of the husband. You never should you ever think of competing with the husband. There are areas where women are better than men. There are areas where men are better than in a situation where the first school, which is the woman, the mother, who is more important than the father at home, is now forced to go out and leaving the child to the at the expense, at whatever happens at home, movies, all these channels and so on, with housemaid, that anything can happen. When the first school, as if the mother is always out, for instance, working late in the banks or in a law firm, or being a politician, staying up to 3 a.m. and so on, and it is repeatedly done so. By the time the child doesn't see the difference between the absence of his mother and her presence, because after all, even the father is being fed by the housemaid or sister or an auntie within the house. So by the time you take away the school that first teaches the basics to the child is away, it means anything can happen. Whatever that is being shown in the media can be copied.
All right. Thank you very much, Professor Dikwa. We'll return to you in our Kaduna Network studios. Let's go over now to Lagos, where we earlier introduced the Director General of the National Orientation Agency, Dr. Garba Abari. Dr. Abari, obviously, I mean, this is your remit in terms of the issues that NOA will handle. But just before we get into what the NOA has tried to do with respect to ethical reorientation, I would like you to respond to the points already articulated by both Dr. Oke and Professor Dikwa. In the first instance, Oke began his analysis by pointing out that one of the consequences of what we are facing today is the post-1966 hangover that led to the accelerated erosion of the pillars of ethical values and ethical value transmission and reinforcement. And that, unfortunately, the impunity that we see today, which, of course, manifests in lawlessness, is quite clearly traceable to what happened in 1966. There are a number of issues arising from that in terms of also the examples that he gave. What is your perspective as to how and why we are in this ethical quagmire in Nigeria today?
Thank you very much, Kingsley. Very good morning. I have listened very carefully to the analysis by my two panelists. But I want to concur every inch of the way with Dr. Oke's submission. Every inch of the way. In fact, what the gentleman out there had done is actually to put a lead on the discussion completely. I would want to take it a little further. First to say, that apart from agreeing with him, that yes, we have got our leadership recruitment system completely warped upside down. We have got mentoring upside down. These have now gotten some concomitant effects on the structure and the processes of governance. The concomitant effects are negative. They take a very big toll on the structure and on the processes of governance, impacting on institutions of state. So much so that the Nigerian state can now be called or be seen to be an overwhelmed state. Overwhelmed in the sense that majority or all of the institutions are not working. Where they are working simply because they are responding to altruistic reasons and purposes. Secondly, the state itself is also becoming, it's been eaten into, and all of this inertia, all these pressures are impacting on its capacity. Now, when you talk about why people behave the way they do, apart from all the sociological and the political analysis and the reasons that have been adduced, is the fact that impunity goes without sanctions. And that tells you that are there no institutions? Even in your opening remarks, Kinsley, you have said that Nigeria's problems are not laws. Of course we have laws. Of course we have sanctions that have been outlined for any form of infraction. Why are they being applied? The state itself is becoming increasingly being incapacitated. The institutions are decomposing. People actually now see cutting corners, impunity, expression of vain values and purposes as being the order of the day. Look at the political leadership, the conduct. When you see, for example, some of our political leaders moving in convoys, or if you see the conduct or if you see businesses, or you see the front desk officer, or you see the petrol attendant, or you see the market woman who cuts corner and fast tracks the process of ripening her bananas or what have you. All of these are both mega and retail colors of values, and they are all going in the same direction because there is no common vision, there is no common mission, there is no leadership that can beat everybody into line through exemplary conduct, simply because the leadership is a leadership that emerges through foul means, and because it emerges through foul means, there is no direct connection between it and the people, or between the leader and the people. Election riggers are the ones that are called leaders. Some of these election riggers are ones that people who probably have no pedigree of any form of achievement. None, probably they are rocks from the society where they are coming from. Maybe they are drug peddlers. Maybe they are ritual killers. Maybe. So the society itself now has jettisoned all the processes of scrutiny through which leaders are supposed to emerge. In the days of old, and of course I remember very well when I was a child, the leader is not necessarily the person who has emerged as through a process of election or whatever. It is society really that decides on who is to go to where. Because they know that Kingsley, the son of Sadalo, the grandson of so and so and so, is coming from so and so family that is rooted in the tradition of public service. Not any longer. So when you have values like this that are completely put upside down, just as Mr. Dr. Oke has said, I said his analysis completely had put a lead on the discussion completely. I agree with you and concur 100%. Definitely the concomitant effect of all that he has laid out have impacted on the structure and the processes of governance. They have killed institutions. The state is becoming increasingly incapacitated. And because of this, what we see are lawlessness. Have you seen, Kingsley, the way a taxi driver affronts and accosts a police officer, some to the point of even holding him by the uniform? Can you imagine a situation like this anywhere in the world? Have you seen a situation, Kingsley, where people can be trafficked? I personally have an experience because in the year 2000, I almost had this hand amputated from the recklessness of a driver who beat the traffic light. Just as the green light had beckoned onto me, and he had also been given the red light, but he wanted to beat the traffic. Just as I was coming in, and he was coming, and he also was coming from the wrong side of the road, of course, because I had been stopped. I became the point of impact. This hand, as you are seeing, this is the part that can stretch. I almost lost it. So it actually tells you that we have an entire gamut of social chaos, crisis in our hands. Now, I have seen the responses of the Vox Populi. Every Nigerian is concerned. But then where do we begin? Do we begin from the community? Do we begin from the government side? Do we begin from the side of the family or the school system? I think the family essentially should be the starting point. And unfortunately, we are in a situation where parents no longer parent the way they should be parenting. We are in a school, we have an education system that is not very well coordinated. Actually, a school system that does not actually educate. It does not educate. It only produces careerists. It only produces careerists. And therefore, round holes, what do you call it? Square pegs in round holes. The education system does not actually create that kind of a total individual who has an all-round education, tertiary, secondary, or primary. And all of this, what I mean by a total, totally educated person, one who is rooted in culture, rooted in character, rooted in behavior, rooted in ethics, in addition to the academics. Now, but this is not really what we see. Little wonder you see these days parents hiring surrogate examiners for their children because the education that they are looking for is not the type that it's not the kind of education. I mean, the education that society should have is not the kind of education that is being given. Little wonder university lecturers have to actually use their position of power and the influence and to take advantage of vulnerable students, either to take money from female students or to ask female students to compromise. So I think there are big problems, and the issue is for all of us because everybody is worried. But then, if we are all worried, what little contribution will you and Okay and Khalifa and myself and any other person who is listening to this program begin to contribute to solving it?
All right, Dr. Abari, in our Lagos Network Studios, thank you very much. You have touched on also very significant points like the other guests. We are being joined now by another guest. We had already indicated that we'll have a guest with us. She's Dr. Olushola Oluwanuga. She's a senior lecturer in psychiatry and also a consultant psychiatrist at the National Hospital in Abuja. We've often had her as a guest here whenever we are discussing mental health issues. Dr. Oluwanuga, a pleasure to have you with us on the program this morning.
Thank you.
Yeah, just before we bring you in to get your own perspective on this matter, I would like to return to, by the way, we have a number of tweets that have come in. You can use our Twitter handle at NTA GMA. You can see there at the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. Now, for the benefit of our viewers, let's simply illustrate what's going on. When we say we have laws in Nigeria, in the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Investment, there is a department or a unit known as Weights and Measures. Weights and measures. So that if you went to a filling station, for instance, to say you want to buy 10 liters of fuel, that 10 liters will be exactly what you get as 10 liters. Not that the pump will be rigged and then you now get 8 liters instead of 10 liters. We also remember the late Professor Dora Akunyili, you know, who made a name for herself fighting barons who were adulterating drugs. Of course, that has to do with ethics in business. And then you go to the marketplace and you see all kinds of persons cheating you and so on and so forth. Cheating, by the way, is an offense. In other words, it's a criminal infraction. It could either be a misdemeanor or a felony, depending on the gravity of what you have done. Plus all kinds of things that we are seeing in our society. And then when you aggregate all of this, then we are seeing the ethical challenge that we face in Nigeria. And okay, again, let's break it down after the conceptual clarification of this issue. The kind of behavior that we see elsewhere. We're talking about a simple example, but oftentimes potentially catastrophic, just as Dr. Abari said, of drivers beating the red light and so on and so forth. But You go to other countries, even in Africa here, countries that are not as endowed as Nigeria, as not as rich as Nigeria, and a taxi driver or an ordinary citizen will be telling you, no, we don't do this in my country. I can't do this, you know. And then life goes on. But here, it's impunity that reigns. So how do we explain that? Is it poverty? Is it what? I know that you have already given your analysis with regard to how we have seen a collapse of the various institutions that ordinarily should act as potent transmitters of our ethics and values. Okay.
The institutions of state, once they are loyal to you and I, there will be no state. It's as simple as that. If you have a police force, and that police force is focused on what the IG thinks or feels, you have a weights and measures ministry or department, and that ministry or department listens to Kingsley and allows him to rig his filling stations, it is not going to play its role. So we have a nation that has actually progressively metamorphosed into a structured criminal enterprise, where every institution of state that's supposed to be a restraint on bad behavior is populated in such a way that it does not serve the interest of any entity except those who are within it or who put it together, etc. So it goes down to the political economy of the Nigerian state. Yes, it is true, nations that are smaller than Nigeria, you go there. I was in Ghana during the burial of Kofi Annan. And interestingly, in the course of trying to pick us up, the vehicle stopped in the wrong place and we entered. And one scraggy-looking fellow stood in front of him. He said, no, you shouldn't have done that. He said, yes. The man came, looked. I said, well, I wouldn't know. We showed him our ID, that perhaps probably he did it in error. He said, no, but he knows he shouldn't stop there, so it's not your fault. He's going to pay so and so 50 cedis. And we sat there and waited until he paid 50 cedis. Now,
in Nigeria, where you say no parking, that's where they will park.
No. Even before the anticipatory misconduct. Sorry, don't be annoyed. And he's about to misbehave. And he's already telling you, and he goes along and misbehaves. But let us also look at some dimensions of it. You find particularly in Central Africa, part of East and Southern Africa, that the average person behaves very well. That's right. In the case of Zambia, I found it very striking, and I had to really sit down and do a detailed analysis. The economy is not an African economy. The sociological and sociopolitical setting is not quite African. It's an environment dominated by an European, by a Western work culture, within which you have blacks that constitute the service population. So in that setting, misconduct is totally unattractive, because you're instantly apprehended. And then there's nothing you gain from misbehaving, so every person has no inclination to behave badly. But here, remember that we've evolved a leadership environment that has created what you might call an aberrant elite. An elite that does not boast of either education, exposure, decency, or anything but power. And that's what we are living with. And look at it in detail and think about it. Yes, the army came, but it was not the army, it was some officers. How have our leaders emerged since then? What have we transmitted to the younger generation? How would you feel a coup is announced and everybody in NTA begins to dance? Oh, yes, nonsense, to hell with them. Do you know who is making the announcement? No. Do you know whether he has managed 50,000 naira successfully? No. Do you know whether he beats his wife? No. Do you know whether he's a good father? No. So you find that in the mix of all of this, you also have an immature polity, an adolescent nation, where political consciousness has not gotten to the point that if somebody gets up in your village and announces he's now the new Igwe, I mean traditionally, people will look at themselves and laugh. What did this boy drink? But we are in a situation today where that announcement can be made and people will actually be discussing it as a serious issue. So the fabric of the Nigerian state has collapsed at several levels. The cultural fabric that held the smaller units of communities and chiefdoms and kingdoms and emirates that were Nigeria, they've lost their cohesion because of a new nation, if you like. In losing that cohesion too, the new nation that should now transfer new values to consolidate and reassure everybody also progressively began to disintegrate. So that you found that, yes, these were independent entities trading with each other before the white man came. The white man came, brought them together, and created Nigeria. But what the white man could not do and cannot be done except by mutual experiential self-acceptance, they couldn't create Nigerians. The creation of Nigerians was taking place before the coup. That's why at that time an Igbo man could win election in Kano as councillor. Somebody from, I think, Kano too, one in Enugu and the rest of it. So how come a dismantling of that pyramid is what I call this? So we must locate where we are. And having done that, the educational system, like Dr. Barry correctly referred to, education is development of the human person, as distinct from the acquisition of survival skills. Today, we have a national development and youth development strategy that focuses on, if you like, artisanship. Entrepreneurship does not make anybody a human being. It won't tell you how to be a father, a responsible member of society. It won't even tell you how to get yourself a girlfriend.
Or a boyfriend.
Or a boyfriend, for that matter, or how to respond when a boy speaks to you. And all of this is happening in a nation, in a tweeting generation. So the point of that being, the very things you need to put a human being together as a responsible member of a community of persons, they all been this, education, educore. To do what? You are to nurture. It's like a gardener. Now, instead of nurturing the human beings, first on values of right and wrong, second on interpersonal relations, third on how you would behave and the environment to be sustainable, all of that has been taken away from our young people. Because if you also look at the leadership reflexes, practically everything our leaders are doing are not sustainable for community life. Today we are complaining about hate speech, but how are we doing it? All our discussions as a people have moved away from how we talk to each other. You want to hold a town hall meeting, and you hold it in Yaradua Center. Total capacity, less than 300. Those in attendance, people like me and you. And while it's going on, nearly half of the people are fast asleep, or they're looking at their watch. While they are talking, nobody is listening. You finish that, you go and do another one in Lagos, Muson Center, or wherever. Even how we communicate, we no longer know. Even the fact that as a people, we communicate by addressing power centers. If I want to talk to people in Kano, and I'm able to get the emir to understand what I want to say, and is able to get some village heads and imams to say that there's an important message that needs to be passed to these people. This man who is coming, this Igbo man, listen to him. Get an interpreter. I've got 90% attention. But I, as a government, will want to talk to Kano people, and I'll make an announcement. And I'll put an advert in the newspaper. In a country where total sales is under 1 million a day, and Kingsley, you know that, out of which not half is read, I'll carry evidence of the advert which is actually evidence of expenditure, not evidence of communication. And so you see that the very things that should hold us together are all dismantling. And the infrastructural foundation for national unity is also gone. We had railways. You would travel through Nigeria, pass through Saminaka. They are talking about Kaduna. It was through railways I knew Kajuru. There's a station there, terminal, and all of that. Now, the nation has been so balkanized that somebody can go to primary school, become a professor of 15 years standing, and he's never left his state because that's also where he did youth service, and he's in the same department that he got all his degrees. So you now have leaders.
And he becomes the vice chancellor of the
state same university.
Of the state university.
Yes, state, in fact. And so you now have national leaders who, under normal circumstances, at best, should be president of their town unions. And so ignorance becomes part of the raw material for a nation that wants to belong to the 21st century, and that cannot happen. And so you find that impunity, personal opinion becomes what you might, ignorance, in fact, has become a point of view.
And it's like a way of life now for so many people. Thank you very much, Dr. Ikechukwu. We'll come back to you in the course of our conversation. Let's bring in Dr. Olushola Oluwanuga quickly into the conversation. We've been looking at ethics, our value systems, and the lingering lawlessness that we experience in our society today. Let's start this way. Let's hear from you. What exactly is responsible for some of those behaviors we see in our society today?
Thank you. I think that we need to look at what goes on in the family unit. Are the family units actually strong? Because in the past, traditionally you found that families lived together, parents, probably some relative or so, younger relative of the parents living with them. And the child grows up with parents, cousins, and so on. But now, what do you find? Even the parents may be living in separate places. And then from birth, a child models the behavior that he or she comes across. When a child is born, the first conflict a child has to resolve is basic trust versus mistrust. The baby knows that if he cries, the mother is there. If he's wet, the mother is there. So the baby begins to believe that somebody is going to attend to his needs. And the baby begins to learn that people give. Somebody is giving time to him, giving attention to him. That baby will also start responding. Smile at the baby smiles back, and so on. And when that baby starts from a trusting environment, the baby begins to develop trust and self-confidence. Now, imagine when, unfortunately, a baby is left, maybe the mother has to go back to work within 2 months of having the baby and so on. The baby could cry. Nobody attends to that child. Eventually, that baby begins to lose trust in the world and begins to feel, look, I have to sort myself out. Even at that age. The same thing goes for respect. A lot of people think that children learn respect by the time they grow. It's from birth. If you take even a day-old baby, you want to change the baby, talk to the baby. I want to change your diaper. I'm going to do this for you. Now, don't just grab the child and start to wash the child and so on. The child begins to learn respect. These are little things that right from infancy begins with the mother and the child bonding. Are we actually paying attention to those things nowadays? Then the baby starts to potty train. That is the point at which discipline begins, because a lot of the problems we have in Nigeria that we complain about are just simply problems of indiscipline. A person should do the right thing, whether 1 million people are watching or whether he's alone in the room. If the person is self-disciplined, and discipline begins when the child begins to learn that there are boundaries. There's a time for doing something. Sometimes you have to wait and you be patient. When a child has gone without learning to trust, without learning discipline, and that child is 3 years old. That child is already beginning to form a character that might not be very amenable to discipline in the future.
Now, since staying with the family, I know that while we were growing up, our mothers had time, they paid attention to us. But if you look at our society today, some people would tell you that because of the level of poverty in the society, most parents, both the father and the mother, would have to go out and fend for the family. And so the mother doesn't have time to spend with the child for that kind of bonding you're talking about. What will you say in terms of having parents going out, you know, to look for how to make ends meet, to take care of the family? Isn't that why the child is bearing the brunt?
Yes, it's the unfortunate reality of our circumstances, and it's not just peculiar to our country alone, that mothers have to go out and work now to contribute to the family economy. But there's what is known as quality time. Even if it is after the mother comes back from work that attention is paid to that child, it will still make a difference. And then who is the child left with when the mother goes out? If in those days it used to be that when mothers put to bed newly, maybe the grandmother will come and spend some time, etc. But all that is beginning to change, especially with urbanization now. The practical thing is now to focus on what happens with the person the child is left with. If a child has to be left with a caregiver, the caregiver has to be aware of the mother's values. The mother herself has to be kind to the caregiver. If somebody is going to look after your child all day, look after the person. Then the other thing also is that even when they go to school, there's something that is missing in our educational system. That is early child care. The government provides education, but early child care, it needs to be emphasized so that mothers can put their children in nursery school that are government-owned. It shouldn't only be private.
All right, Dr. Oluwanuga, thank you very much. And indeed, all the other guests would like to appreciate you. We are still on this topic. We'll take a short break now. We have a torrent of tweets that have come in. We'll try to, of course, take as many of them as we can, but that will be after this interval.
These days, people get their news and information from more media sources than ever before. Some of the news and information given are fake, unverified, doctored, and manufactured to create confusion, stir disaffection, and cause disunity. Before you believe or share any news, ask yourself, is this real? Is it from a credible source? Is it verified or verifiable? Fake news is dangerous, whether you do it for fun or for political gains. Real people can get hurt. Fake news, don't create it, don't spread it.
This is a public service announcement from NTA.
All right, you're welcome back. Joy, let's go through some of the tweets, most of the tweets rather, not some, so that you don't say that we didn't take your tweets.
Exactly.
Let's go through the tweets that we have. We understand that there are others still coming in. This is from a handle known as Announcer. He has two here, so we'll take them. It's an Announcer. That's your Twitter handle. So yes, there are good rules in Nigeria, but they do not seem to exist because of the high level of impunity and injustice. Now, this is what makes everyone see it as normal to violate the rule of law and abnormal to obey the rules. They will say, this is Nigeria.
All right, let's take this one from @Real Obozua. He says, uphold justice no matter who the offender is, and this will eradicate impunity and others, even to the grassroots. People will learn. A Nigerian will violate traffic rules with a smile, but dare not do so in another country because he knows he will be penalized.
All right, this is coming from Oni Michael Kayode. It says that I'm not on TV right now, but I are sympathetical to our culture. But what of today? Education through law can... I'm sorry, this is all jumbled up. Let me just keep that right away and go to Dele Jack Solomon.
Yes.
Ethics and values are very essential for the fight against corruption to succeed in Nigeria. In the present globalizing world, the issue of integrity, whether in the public or private sector or personal affairs, is increasingly in demand. The issue of integrity should be taken seriously.
And let's take the next one from Festus Akimboyewa. He tweets, the reign of chaos and willful disobedience of law in Nigeria is what to expect in countries where court orders are not obeyed and people know that they can get away with breaking the law because the strength of our national institutions is weak. Time to strengthen our institutions.
Now, this is again the Dele Jack Solomon we have on says, in industrialized and advanced democracies, the constitution of societal values determine the actions of politicians, and understanding the values of a society or person brings clarity to the life of such an individual or society. Let's, of course, embrace our positive values.
Kayo Sam in our tweets, Dr. Ikechukwu just spoke the truth. We have the wrong shepherds in the country. They steal, and we, the youth, applaud them. We are inspired to steal just like them. And what do we get? Chaos.
Onoye Victor tweets, now the teaching of moral instructions, civics, and history should be made compulsory in all our schools to promote ethical and moral values.
All right, this one is from Dele Jack Solomon Medj. For Nigeria to build a strong foundation for true democracy, there is need for the society to promote ethical standards in politics, good social and moral values, accountability and transparency in governance. And for this to be possible, the people must be politically educated and mature.
Now, Kadri Olajide tweets, now moral decadence starts with the leaders and the elderly, who produce the generations they cannot control.
All right.
We have another one here from Cecilia Okoroma. Cecilia Okoroma has this tweet. It says, pity that most Nigerians have thrown morals overboard. And there are times you ask, why do people go to church or the mosque?
All right. Adams Taju tweets, the rule of law still stands. Nobody is above the law. The custodians of the law should lead by example.
And then this is from William Okoro. It says, we don't have a true national indoctrination system, which only the military service can ingrain. It says that the president should ensure that this is done. Most developed countries had or have it. At 18, you serve for 3 years until 21 and remain on the reserve list till 27. Discipline will become second nature. That's right.
All right, let's go quickly to Egbo Anode Tony Jeff. He tweets, Our problem in Nigeria is most people are ignorant of their rights. Institutions that ought to enforce the law and punish offenders are weak. So when you have a terrible enforcement of rules, ethics, and value system, then we have a total collapse.
Collapse, that's right. Then we have this one from Brighton Emazo. It says, we need to pass the ethnicity. We need to go past ethnicity and put Nigeria first. If possible, scrap state of origin from your CV. If you are a Nigerian, you are a Nigerian that can walk and live anywhere without sentiments.
All right, let's go quickly to this one from Sani Michael Omakoji. He tweets, I commend NTA again and again for being sensitive on the state of our nation. But it's sad that despite their campaign, ethnicity, favoritism, nepotism, sectionalism, which also affect our value system and ethics, have become the order of the day. I wish the opinions here help us.
Chris Simeon has this tweet. Now, values give us a sense of right and wrong, good and bad. Therefore, a value system that is established in terms of norms, beliefs, customs, attitudes, and group of people should be upheld. Okay.
All right, we have a new set of tweets coming in. Let's take this one from Richard Ole. He tweets, today's episode should be repeated again and again so that all Nigerians listening to what we're collectively doing to our future.
All right, this is from Boot, that's the Twitter handle. A situation where an 18-year-old without job drives multi-million naira car is celebrated even in religious homes. This is sad.
This one is coming from Egwando Tony Jeff, and he tweets, the NOA is actually not doing enough in disseminating information, enough in addressing values and ethics and right of the people and punishment. Information dissemination model they've adopted is different from what was obtainable years back in pidgin and mother tongue.
And Cecilia Koroma has this tweet. It says, even right there in places of worship, atrocities are committed, and the leaders do not lead by example. And let's take this one from Suleiman Papagana. That's the next one below Cecilia there. It says, government should join hands with traditional and religious leaders in promoting ethical values at the community level. Sorry, we've had to skip a few of the tweets that, of course, were a bit repetitive, but we'd like to thank you for sending in your tweets and indeed the sentiments that you have expressed along with our guests. Just before we return to Kaduna and then to Lagos to get the comments of our guests, it would appear, even from the analysis made by Dr. Oluwanuga, that we've been talking about, of course, that you have the divide of nature and nurture. Whether you're talking about the appropriate institutions of the community or of the society that should help nurture ethical values, that would be the nature. I want to ask Dr. Oluwanuga, of course, who is a psychiatrist, is there a hormonal factor? You are smiling again because you remember I asked you a question about why people just, steal like people who are crazy. Is there a hormonal factor in what has happened to us, either as individuals or collectively, that there is now, there's no feeling of being lawless. It's just do it and then you get away with it. Is there something that goes on in the brain that makes people just behave the way they behave, and then we are all in a mess?
Well, I think that you said it already. It's a matter of nature and nurture. People look at the environment, and the environment permits them to be lawless. They go ahead and do it. If a person knows that bad behavior has consequences, they are less likely to behave badly. Having said that, truthfully speaking, hunger is a potent cause of bad behavior. When people are hungry, the blood glucose level is low. They are less patient. They are less likely to listen. They are less likely to be attentive. They are also more likely to be impulsive and do the wrong thing. So, yes, I guess that to an extent, the perennial poverty around may contribute to some level of aggression that we see, because there's too much aggression in the society. You know, any simple thing, before you know it, people descend into brawls, which brings me to something I find disturbing. I've been seeing some advertisements nowadays depicting Nigerians as people always quarreling in the marketplace, shouting. I don't think that those things are good examples for children to watch. I think that it's important for us to model the right thing. Children act on what they see being modeled. And it's important for us to look at the fact that, yes, we need to look at good nutrition. People need to be well fed, at least have something in their stomach so that they will not react out of aggression. The other thing is that I think that women should be given more space in leadership, because when you talk about hormones, testosterone, which is the dominant male hormone, tends towards aggression. To me, I don't think we have enough females in leadership, so that perhaps there might be a tempering down of the tone, and there may be a more maternal and gentle way of pointing people to the right thing. I think that we've had years of military rule. I think that now that we have democracy, women should be encouraged into the democratic space so that there will be a maternal building up of the society.
So can we say that explains why some women, in terms of behavioral pattern, do better than men, as some people will say?
Yes, generally females are better behaved. No, it's a fact. I mean, female children, everybody who has ever had male children and female children will know that their boys are usually more of a handful. You have to rein them in, and at an early age too. But girls tend to be more compliant. So I think that we need to look at another model. Let's give women a chance. Let's let people know that it's not about your muscle, it's about your character.
All right, thank you very much. Dr. Okay, very briefly before we go to Lagos. Yes.
Well, yeah, boys must be boys, madam. But more seriously, the woman is actually the stronger half. Of the human species, but her strength lies in a resilience the man cannot easily generate. And therefore, and a sensitivity too to right and wrong that the man may not always possess in his forceful movement. But having said that, the truth of the matter is that the woman's dominance need not manifest in visibility. It could. It should where appropriate. But where we assume that the woman must occupy office in order to have impact, we've already lost it completely. Who gave birth to everybody in this room? Who is it you listen to instinctively with trust? Is your mother. Who is it you protect if you want to? Is your sister. So the womanhood need not become dominant by being in front, but by determining the quality of what could be in front. The man, for instance, in a leadership position who does good consultation with the woman will be more effective. But the angle I wanted to take up was where she more or less talking about stomach infrastructure.
Yes, I was going to raise
yes, because for me, there's an essential...
About the upper class.
No,
Are they hungry?
There's an essential point to be made here. Because once we emphasize the effect of hunger, we overlook the fact that as human beings, we have free will. 4 of us are in this studio. We are very hungry. I feel we should kill this guy and take his bread. The rest of you say, how can you do that? We are equally hungry if measured by the level of blood glucose, but something restrained you that didn't restrain me. Where am I leading up to? In the past, there was more poverty. People will go to the farm in the morning, probably eat a piece of roasted yam in the afternoon and come back. Blood glucose level, very low. Energy level, very low. Conditions for irritability, close to 100%. And yet they are controlled. Because there are things that the society cannot tolerate if you do it. Bembeyi used to be head of NDLEA. The effect of that is different from what it is today. Now, the point I'm trying to make is that we must not make the mistake of justifying misconduct on the strength of either poverty or hunger or whatever. The collapse of values has led to misconduct becoming attractive. If you hold a policeman and you're not held up, because the policeman has collected money from you. So it's not just the fact that you're hungry. Your refusal to respect the uniform is induced by the environment that has violated the uniform through the conduct of the policeman. It's not discountenancing the effect of that. The tendency to misconduct is high when there's hunger, when there are a lot of things that irritate you. But if it's taken as a primary and sufficient condition, it will be sending the wrong signals, because I will actually begin to think, well, can't they see I'm hungry? I have a right to misbehave. It will be wrong. Yeah.
A hungry man or a hungry woman is an angry man or an angry woman. Even though the level of anger of a woman, according to our theories here, will be less. Okay, thanks a lot. Let's go to Dr. Garba Abari in Lagos. Dr. Abari, of course, you've listened to, again, all the guests plus your own points, as well as that of Professor Dikwa. Let me ask this question. Can we regain our collective sanity?
Thank you very much. I think we can. I think we can. Because many or most of these problems that have now been outlined just did not drop like, they just didn't drop from the skies. What is needed is actually to retrace our steps and begin to do the right things. We probably must have missed the bus elsewhere, but the bus is still moving sluggishly to the point that if we hasten our steps, we will be able to catch up with it. How do I mean? Gradually, we are seeing. There is one very fundamental point that Dr. Oke had made about how collapse of infrastructure is also impacting on our capacity to build the Nigerian individual. There is a Nigeria, but there are very few Nigerians. Very few Nigerians. What we had started, take the effect of the roads in national integration, the railways in national integration, the school system in national integration. The whole idea of building up federal government colleges and locating them in different parts of the country and bringing students from all over the country to interact as their formative stages in Form 1 up to class 5 or 6, and the HSC in those days was to actually create the Nigerian. Today, no father would want to send his child to a federal government secondary school because of the collapsed structures there. Now, as a result of all of this, we have found ourselves not talking to ourselves. We are only ending up talking about ourselves, not talking to ourselves. Now, this inability to talk to ourselves, has also impacted in the way and manner by which we live, we relate, we understand, we perceive our relationship with each other. So this has reduced the perspective. Instead of looking at every Nigerian from a pan-Nigerian perspective, we'll see him from the prism of either his religion or his language or his geopolitical origin or his state origin, in some states even from within the context of his local government. Now, this is actually something which we must begin to address. Rebuilding the Nigerian infrastructure space. In the process also, rebuilding the capacity of the Nigerian state itself, by which I mean also the building of the Nigerian institutions that make up the state, and in the process, again, bringing in institutions of formal and non-formal institutions that go a long way in character molding and the molding of behavior and the inculcation of values. It is very true. Churches and mosques have now become business outfits, and the state is there. It is neither a regulator state, nor a state, nor a social democratic state, nor a liberal state. In fact, it is a state that is completely lost in the wilderness. So I think to a very large extent, we can recoup our lost values. But we cannot begin this unless we have a second hard look at where we are coming from and begin to know where we are going. I think this is where I can stop. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Garba Abari, DG, National Orientation Agency. Let's go over quickly to Professor Dikwa in our Kaduna Network Center to get his closing views. I mean, what can we do to change the current narrative?
Thank you, Joy. I wish I had 1 hour to talk. The thing is, it is very possible in the sense that we have to have systemic reorientation, retrace our footsteps. It is just a matter of indiscipline. Indiscipline with the wrong type of divert it for other things, and then you have lawyers who go there. In our days, in the early 80s and so on, where professors of law like Michi Toby and so on were teaching us, we knew that the law profession is not for, say the instance where a particular scenario where China in the past wanted to build a wall to guard itself against foreign aggression. And each time the aggressors came, they came through the door. So they did their little research and discovered that, the building alone was not enough without building the people itself. And therefore, allowing a few people to have their own way and without punishment within days, not about just
Nine. It's usually about 5 minutes to 9, where we begin to shut down. We want to appreciate you. This is a subject matter that we'll have to return to at some point in the future. Professor Dikwa joining us from our Kaduna Network Center. Thank you very much. We also would like to extend our appreciation to Dr. Garba, who joined us from our Lagos Network Studios. He's Director General of the National Orientation Agency. A lot of work to do, not just for you alone, but indeed for other relevant pillars of cultural and ethical transmission. Thanks a lot, Dr. Garba Abari, DG NOAA in Lagos. And with us here in the Abuja studios, our deep appreciation to Dr. Olushola Oluwanuga. She's a consultant psychiatrist at the National Hospital in Abuja. Always a pleasure having you on Good Morning Nigeria. And also, last but not the least, Dr. Oke Ikechukwu, of course, is a philosopher and executive director, Development Specs Academy. Of course, he's had his own run in public service. Okay, thanks a lot for being around with us. Thank you. And by the way, he used to be a member of the editorial board of the Guardian newspapers. Okay, that's Good Morning Nigeria. That's the much we can take in our conversation segment. We understand we only have just a few minutes to go over to the Weather Center.
Glad to have you join us on the weather forecast from the Nigerian Meteorological Agency. Do you know that to a large extent, weather conditions can affect your feelings, your range of thoughts, and even your behavior? Now you know. So let's take a look at how Thursday's weather is expected to play out. Those living in the north should expect sunny weather throughout the day. Then people in the central region could experience cloudy conditions with sunshine intervals in the morning. The southwest will be mostly cloudy, while the eastern half of the south we expect thunderstorms in the morning. Then progressing into